Okay, everyone, places, and action.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You talking to me?
Here, looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
This is the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by More Movies. Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by moremovies.co.uk. I'm David Roberts, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Greg Fisher, as we use this first series to take a look and discuss some of our favourite films of all time. I've selected Exam, a British psychological thriller released in 2009, with an ensemble cast, including Colin Salmon, Chris Carey, Jimi Mistry, Luke Mabley, and Gemma Chan, amongst others. The plot follows 8 talented candidates who have reached the final stage of selection to join the ranks of a mysterious and powerful corporation. Entering a windowless room, an Invigilator gives them 80 minutes to answer one simple question. He outlines 3 rules they must obey or be disqualified. Don't talk to him or the armed guard by the door. Don't spoil their papers, and don't leave the room. He starts the clock and leaves. The candidates turn over their question papers, only to find they're completely blank. As the clock ticks down, they must figure out what the company expects of them, and how far they are prepared to go to secure the ultimate job. The film is a modern morality tale in the sleek guise of a sci-fi tinged thriller. The setting is modest, the ambition is big. Plot twists, lighting changes, and shifts of tone work hard to sustain our attention. On a small budget, the modest cast solidly put together a fantastic thriller that's all about the process of solving the puzzle at its heart. Before we jump in and discuss the film, here's a clip from the director, Stuart Hazeldine, talking about what inspired him to make the film.
It came from a telephone call with my best mate. We were kicking around ideas for a short film, and he said, I had this idea about some school kids who go into an exam hall and they turn over their sheets of paper and they're blank. And I said, that sounds cool, what do they do next? And he wasn't entirely sure. He was just thinking, they express themselves, they do origami, etc. And I said, well, what if we turned that into more of a job interview scenario and we made it a real sort of life or death job? We must get this job. That would really sort of bake your noodle to turn over a sheet of paper and find it's completely blank. If you're this big type A personality and you're prepared to write an amazing essay about why you should be hired or to deal with any intellectual challenge, and you have absolutely no guidance at all. And I thought, well, that's quite surreal and that's quite interesting.
So, The Exam from 2009, an independent British film there. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, great film. I've not heard of it before, never seen it before. Very slick. As you said to me beforehand, it's like a play. It only takes place in one space. And these kind of movies that are quite, insular and they're minimalist, something as famous as 12 Angry Men, for example, I mean, they've got to be good, haven't they? They've got to have a good script.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's an interesting one. And I'll preface our whole podcast here by really saying, if you're interested in seeing the film and you haven't seen it yet, then it is spoilers ahead from this point, and it is a film that could easily be spoiled.
Yeah, maybe go and see the film, then come back to us and have a listen
I think
to the
so.
podcast.
But exactly that. Yeah, it's one of those films I like to call the one location films, which are my favourite. They're my guilty pleasure of cinema.
Let's list off a few of your favourites then. What do you like? Rope?
Rope is a fantastic one. 12 Angry Men, Phone Booth.
Phone Booth,
yeah,
I didn't think of that. Brilliant, yeah, that's a good example. The thing about Phone Booth, for the most part, it's exterior, and you think of these films as being interior. So Phone Booth kind of plays with the format in that sense, even though it is interior as in the phone booth, but really he's outside in the streets.
And there's other examples like Lifeboat by Hitchcock as well, which is all on a lifeboat in the ocean.
Sure.
So, and what I love about them is exactly that because they're in one place, it's relying far less on action set pieces and creating huge journeys and relying on all of that. And it's all about, okay, get some great actors, great characters with a fantastic script. And it relies totally on that, and it is like theatre in that way, in terms of if it's not good enough, it's going to fail really badly. But usually is the case that they're very good, and I think in this case it really is.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, this one slipped me by. 2009, I was quite shocked because I didn't take a note at the time until after I'd watched it of the release year, and I was quite shocked to see it was 11 years ago, because it felt very, very contemporary, not least because of the mention of pandemics in the plot.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's suffering from the pandemic, and or not everybody, but a lot of people have got it, and the whole precursor is put on the understanding that they're going to work for this pharmaceutical company that are working on the cure. So I thought, geez, that's really
yeah, it's interesting because I haven't seen this film for a few years now. I watched it a few times when it first came out and loved it back then, and watching it back now, it is interesting because I kind of forgotten how prescient that in this time it is. It's really relevant to now, and you don't find out about the kind of angle of it being a pharmaceutical company and this virus, this pandemic, until probably halfway into the film, really. But then it all starts to come out, and certainly at the end you find a lot more about it. And when it starts breeding out, it is right in this moment, because we're living COVID times.
Yeah,
it's so relevant to what is happening right now, and
yeah,
it makes you think of what might be happening somewhere.
That's why I felt like it was really contemporary. I mean, 11 years, it's not a hell of a long time, but I thought, gosh, it feels like it was done in the last few years. Down to the look of it as well, it's very slick looking. They did a lot with what little they had. I noticed when they changed the different light tones, they go to ultraviolet and infrared and stuff, and that changed the whole dynamic of the shots and the mood of everything really well. So I like what they did there. As I say, I thought they did quite a lot with very little.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think looking at it now, it's got a lot of it reminded me a lot of like Netflix cinema. It's got the kind of gritty feel to it in a way, and quite a bit of Black Mirror in a way.
Yeah.
It gave a lot of vibe of that, and it made me think how much it might it might have influenced some of the stuff we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, definitely. It's got to have come from that kind of line, if you will. It felt very British. You got Gemma Chan, Natalie Cox. I mean, Luke Mabley, who plays White. He's a son of a. You just want to kill him, and
Yeah, he's a real giddy.
He's an absolute. And I thought to myself, you know what? This guy's a great actor, because I'm supposed to hate him, and I absolutely hate him watching him.
Yeah.
But
I thought Jimi Mistry as well as Brown, and it was a very sadistic and horrible character that I really didn't like.
I thought Chukwudi Iwuji was excellent as well as Black. He shone in it.
Yes.
He was very immediate, and I'd never seen him in anything else as well, but I thought he was good in that. Jimi Mistry, for me, because of the whole EastEnders kind of background, and I felt like he was maybe too many years in soaps, so he didn't quite cut it for me as much as the others did. Pollyanna McIntosh, really good as brunette. I was only disappointed to see Gemma Chan from Channel 4's Humans. She's the first to go, so she's only in it like literally a couple of minutes. She starts writing on the paper, they chuck her out, and I was like, oh, Gemma Chan, where you going? You're not coming back now? Damn. Because I think she's an excellent actor. Really liked her at Humans. Thought she was great.
Yeah.
So when I seen she was in it, I thought, oh, great, Gemma Chan. And then it's like, you're the first to go. I was like, shit.
But the best performance for me as well is Colin Salmon as the Invigilator.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's been in everything over the years.
He was in The
James
Cube,
Bond,
wasn't he? Wasn't he in The Cube?
Possibly.
Or Cube 2, one of them. Yeah, the James Bonds. Was he in the Pierce ones? Wasn't he there with M?
The Pierce Brosnan ones, yeah.
He was M's second in command.
Sidekick.
Sidekick. Gopher.
And he
Gopher.
was,
He used to go and get Judi Dench's brandy for her.
He was in the Resident Evil films as well, and
that's
I know
what
quite
I was
well
thinking
from
of,
he's
not
in,
Cube. It was the Resident Evil things. And do you remember his death in that one? He's in that room, and it's like the Cube in that sense, because he's in that room with the laser, and he manages to jump over it because it cuts everyone to pieces, and then it evolves and it does that like square grid and just cuts him into square chunks. That's why I was thinking of the Cube, because he gets cubed in that.
He gets macerated.
He's brilliant, though. He is an absolute consummate professional, and he oozes class. So it was good to see him.
I think just his intro to the whole film, where he gives the kind of speech at the beginning, and it's the perfect person to really set it up and get the brilliant, succinct kind of off we go, and it's delivered great.
Another one of those guys that commands authority. Very good at doing that. Almost like, Alec Baldwin levels of Glengarry Glen Ross authority there,
But I think it's nice as well, because this is obviously it's a great British film, and as you say, it's one of them ones I think has slipped many people by. It was a film that passed a lot of people by, and a lot of people haven't seen it, which is a real shame, I think, and that's why I try to tell people, well, you want a good film, go watch this.
Yeah.
And but it's got people that you kind of know from films and stuff over the years, and British actors.
Certainly
and stuff.
British stuff, British soaps, British TV, smaller independent British films like Filth, something like that.
Yeah.
Pollyanna McIntosh was in Filth.
But it's not a star-studded cast.
No.
And I think that's good, because I think that would take away the believability of it and the naturalism of it.
As far as I'm concerned, like Colin Salmon was the most famous face I
person
knew,
in it, yeah.
Apart from possibly Jimi Mistry, because he's, I might have criticised his acting a little bit, but he was the most recognisable face because he's been in EastEnders and
so many
was he in
soaps,
Coronation Street as well? I don't know, but geez, I thought I know this
he's in
guy.
one of them.
I know this guy. But yeah, I mean, it's a very clever piece in that it raises a lot of philosophical questions, as these pieces always do. You mentioned 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Well, it's full of philosophy and it's full of ethics, and these films, if they're done right, that is exactly what they bring out. And it's funny when you mention the Netflix kind of production value. I relate to that because of did you watch The Platform?
I haven't seen it yet, no, but
That's a Spanish film there on Netflix. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it, because I'd put that somewhere between a film like this and something like The Cube, or something that's a little bit more brutal, but an excellent one location piece.
yeah, it's interesting, because I remember at the time thinking, oh, this is a kind of a mix between something like 12 Angry Men and something like The Cube.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of a blending of those two worlds. It's not as brutal as something like Cube, which is a great film. I really enjoyed the first Cube.
Again, that's unsung. Not everybody's seen it, but those that did, it's.
I think it's far better than Saw, in my opinion.
Oh, it's a much better film. Not to knock Saw too much, because that did really well when it came out, but it's a different.
Yeah, I think the
Saw's
first
a different thing. I
film.
think it's.
But I think as well, like looking at it now, it's funny how obviously, I guess we see this as we've reviewed some of the older films in these podcasts. But it's funny just looking 10 years on how we say some of the dynamics change now. Looking at it as we've got COVID around, and that changes some of the atmosphere. But I think another thing that struck me as well is it felt like an escape room.
Yeah. Oh, that's
that was something that wasn't really a thing in 2009.
No.
But now, obviously, every city in the world has escape rooms. Everyone knows what they are. Yeah. And so now that's something that applies upon it, kind of retrospectively. And it feels very much like that kind of...
Yeah.
You could imagine going to an escape room and it being these kind of challenges,
Well, The Cube, of course, is the ultimate escape room. It's like, escape and you win your life or something. But with this one, it kind of also crosses more into the, the Black Mirror... simile there is definitely working. It's certainly that kind of thing that Black Mirror looks at, because you're really judging people on their actions, about what they do when they're put in a high pressure situation. What I'm trying to say is they choose to be there, and
yes,
and that brings out certain character traits in them all, and therein is the interesting point in it all. Who's going to do what,
and that's always the thing, isn't it? That these films, 12 Angry Men is the greatest example, because to me that's the greatest one location film and one of the greatest films that's ever been made, in my opinion. Yeah. And you look at that film, and the brilliance of that is each person is a fantastic, fully fleshed, developed character, and you see that character develop through the film, and you see their emotions and their traits coming out.
Yeah.
And I think that happens here as well, is exactly that. Each character is so unique and individual, and you see their traits being played out and coming out through scenarios that take place, and you realise who's the coward, who's the bastard, who's the one who's scared, who's the shy one, and stuff like that.
Who's the smart one, who's the compassionate one.
And it all takes place there. You see every human emotion coming out across the film, I think. It's a real psychological textbook of what humans are. And
also with these things, when you look at them, if you're really giving it your full attention and getting into the film, it's a good reflection on yourself. We can be included in which character traits we're aboard by, which ones we're relating to, who we think is the bad guy or the good guy, or the
that's it. What are you laughing at? What are you disgusted at? What are you scared at? Yeah,
it's a good
it's interesting.
It's a litmus test. Are you doing the litmus configuration? Are you doing?
I'm doing the litmus
configuration. Well, it's like a litmus test.
Let me just lick that note.
In a way,
it's I think it's really clever, and it's a really strong script on the most part, and I think it really develops some interesting topics as it goes through, and is able to take that kind of because I think there's a lot of these kind of one location stage play kind of things. There's a lot of them in the 50s and 60s, really. Budgetary reasons a lot of the time. Nowadays they're less approached, apart from maybe indie perspectives a lot. But this was a good example of taking that kind of old fashioned style and really doing something that felt contemporary with it.
Oh, certainly. It definitely feels that. If nothing else, it's a very contemporary piece, made all the more so, as I say, because of this emphasis on the pandemic and stuff. But, that's what dystopian cinema and dystopian stuff like Black Mirror, etc., that's the scary part about them, because they start to actually predict things that are going to be a problem or are going to happen, and that's their point in a way. They are a social commentary. It's good entertainment, or shocking entertainment, but it's supposed to shock you because there's a hell of a lot of truth in it all. It's supposed to inform us about ourselves as much as it is to entertain us,
And I think it's got that other great element of that I love in these kind of films, really, and I love from murder mysteries and that kind of cinema. It does keep you guessing. You're guessing different things throughout. What's this? What's that? And all different things. And it has got that twist at the end.
Yep.
But it's interesting because I think the director's been on record saying that he didn't want the film to just be about the twist. He wanted it to have its own weight, and I think it does. Watching it again, and after a few years have passed, it still felt fresh, even though I knew the ending. That didn't matter. The journey they go on is important as well. But the bonus is a nice little twist at the end as well.
Yeah. Directed by Stuart Hazeldine, who wrote it as well. It was obviously something he'd been working on for a while. Looking at his IMDb page, we haven't got a hell of a lot of credits of recent. He did something called The Shack in 2017. Never saw that either. So come on.
But he's done a lot of writing though.
Yeah.
So he wrote on stuff like The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Tripods. There's a lot of like science fiction stuff he's been involved in,
oh, cool.
And I think you can see some of that influence in there.
He's got a BAFTA nom. But yeah, if you're out there, Stuart, and you're listening, get on with it, son. Let's have another great movie. You got the ingredients. Let's have another one.
Let's have the exam too.
Yeah, you could in a way. But I'm sure a mind like that is capable of like Charlie Brooker. He's loads of different ideas and information, all within that same style.
Yeah.
And I think you made a good point in terms of this kind of film has definitely influenced what was to come with Black Mirror, and yes, the phenomena of escape rooms and stuff is brought on by this kind of set piece.
And it's a great example of what can be done on small budgets, isn't it? You know, $600,000 for this film, which is
it's nothing
in filmmaking terms. It's a drop in it. You know,
nothing.
It's
it
nothing.
It's a shoestring budget in filmmaking terms,
but it comes across.
They did a lot with that, though. It looked
beautifully.
slick. It was really nicely shot, and yeah, very good use of close-ups, especially at the start. You know that the first opening couple of minutes, and you don't see anybody clearly. You just see details from them, a chin or their hands, and it looked nice. It was really nicely shot. And as I said, the set itself, I thought they did a lot with it. It was just a room with some chairs in it. Props to the security guy as well for just being the silent Bob of the movie and not saying a word.
Oh, how hard must that role have been?
Yeah, and he was brilliant at it because he was stone-faced. I was looking for it myself, you know, like people who go up to the Queen's guards at the
guards
and they
stuff.
try and make them laugh or say something and stand back from the Queen's guard. Well, you're not going to get that with this guy. That was the only thing as well. I mean, when he uses that guy's hand to operate the gun, it was stretching a little bit there for me. I thought, oh, would he let him do that? I don't know. That's a bit much, but I suppose it introduced that gun threat to it that you know, some of it was guessable. I mean, you could tell straight away that Mr. Brown was going to be the other son of a bitch. I mean, obviously Mr. White's the biggest son of a bitch in the room because he's just mouth on legs straight away going for it. But Mr. Brown sort of sneering at him and stuff, you thought, oh, he's also a bit of a piece of work.
But in a different way. And I think there's elements of the story and the script where you kind of go, it is stretching, it is at the seams in places, but I think it just about stays in enough.
Oh, it does. I agree.
That you kind of you pass it over and go, okay, we'll let that go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well. You say the beginning bit because I think that's a brilliant kind of start to the film where it introduces them all, the close-ups and stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, it's interesting because in that it's like she puts the plaster on her foot and the plaster on the scar, and you know, taking the pills and stuff. And each one of those things is actually setting something up.
Yeah.
That's going to happen in the room, and it's really interesting and kind of laying groundwork even in those close-ups at the very, very beginning.
It is, in a sense,
really nice
it's also a mystery. It's a mystery film.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got that element of clues, and just like you say, an escape room, you've all got to work together to figure out the clues, and there was very good stuff that have you guessing at home, you know, sort of guess along with us. Some stuff was a bit obvious. I mean, you know, when the deaf guy, or deaf, whatever they call him, the French guy gets taken out the room and the glasses fall on the floor and stay in the room, you know straight away they're going to come back into it. Even though they don't telegraph it, they don't make a big thing of it, like do a single shot on them landing or anything, but you just know. But that's, you know, that's fine. That's the kind of film it should be, and you know, it's what makes it exciting, and you know they're there and they're going to come into it, but then you've got to guess how. And
I think some people, like, you know, because you see people criticise things like that, like, oh, it telegraphs something or whatever, but you kind of think it's kind of the point of a film like this, because you're trying to guess things throughout the film, and it sometimes might be a red herring.
Yeah, sometimes they do throw a red herring.
The whole thing is to misdirect the audience.
Yeah. I agree.
But I think it gets into interesting areas because it's ambitious on its budget.
Yeah.
But it comes across really, really well. And it's got, you know, plenty of plot twists. It changes really fast. The tone comes in and out to all the different points, you know. 1 minute it's all up and down and running around. The next minute it's really serious and kind of,
I think
someone's playing a Machiavellian little role in the background, you know.
Oh, yeah. And you don't know about the rest of them, who's going to be like what, and you know, like I say, who's good, who's bad, who's going to be weak, who's going to be strong, etc. I think if you were, you know, you're starting out as a filmmaker, even just in the short film format, 10, 15 minutes, a piece like this is something to aim for, rather than go into lots of different locations or having different sets or shooting out, with too much extravagance and overreaching, to go for something like this, a bit more insular, a bit more, one stage, so to speak, like we say, a theatrical setting. If you get some great actors and you've got a good script, there you go. I mean, you could do a Lars von Trier. It wouldn't even have to be a good set if you've got great script and great actors. But I think these plays, if you will, they pan out as great little dramas.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect litmus test for a director or a filmmaker. I think, if you're going to try something, this will focus your attention on how it's shot.
Yeah.
What's your character development? How's your dialogue? How well are your actors performing? It'll focus you on those key areas, which are areas that we know, as we've talked about a lot of times, that can kill big films.
Any one of them. Any one of them is not right. And it's got to be all those elements, you see. But this one, considering all those elements, really did a good job hitting the nail on the head. Funny, there you go. I think it's pegged as 2009. I think general release was in 2010 for some reason, or maybe that's just the Hong Kong release. I think the BFI
or something had it out at first or something, maybe.
Well, we don't know the story on that, but...
Oh, that's it. It was released at the Edinburgh Film
Festival. We do know the story
on
that. It was released at the Edinburgh Festival, apparently, according to our expert, Dave Roberts. But what I was going to say was, we were talking about Inception a couple of episodes ago, and that was 10 years ago as well. And that is another film that feels quite contemporary, doesn't feel like it was a decade ago. So do you think that there's this kind of watermark or this line in the sand over which we do not know, this line in the sand that's over 10 years, or under 10 years, I should say, and it feels contemporary still, but beyond that, well, it's up to individual cases then. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking out my head.
I think there's two elements to it. I think it depends on the film.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the film, because some stuff will just date very, very quickly. A good example would be something like The Mummy Returns or something. Within 5 years, the CGI looked very, very quickly.
Go to hell and take your friends with you!
So things like that can really affect something in a very short space of time.
Even more famous example, The Phantom Menace.
I'd say less The Phantom Menace, more something like Attack of the Clones.
Why? What's the difference?
The difference there is Phantom Menace was still shot on film, and Episode 2 was shot on digital video. It was the first complete digital film, and for that reason resolution was limited, so even coming in later you get
did that mean that they could do more with the CGI because it was digital?
Yeah.
Or did it just mean that it made it easier to do stuff?
Well, they could do more quicker.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It made it easier.
So obviously in the time span they've got to get to release, they haven't
got to do the transfers, the digital transfers that they must have had to do from shooting on film.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And still in the Phantom Menace it's interesting, because Phantom Menace still used a lot of models and stuff.
Yeah.
For stuff. Episode 2 is where it really kicked off into everything's CGI.
Well, I was just thinking of Jar Jar Binks, really.
Missa called Jar Jar Binks. Missa, your humble servant.
That would be the standout,
the greatest character that Star Wars ever produced.
Absolutely.
Dave and I both play a game, by the way, called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I don't know if we've got any snackers out there listening, but we're still waiting for Jar Jar Binks to be introduced to that game. Come on.
Missa back.
Get on it, CG.
Come on, EA. Come on.
CG, get them on it. Capital Games.
But I think, films can age in two different ways, I think. I think if a film is, like a film that's 20 years old now doesn't feel contemporary, and that's just a sign of the times.
Right.
In most cases. And then films like within 10 years, most will feel contemporary, I'd agree with that, but there is cases, and it's usually something like CGI or something that ages it quickly. Although I think that happens less now, but it can have an effect. Or if it's, like, for example, if it's a film about something that happens at the time, like a political film or something like that, that can sometimes affect kind of the feeling of the age of the film, you know.
Yeah, it's funny with political films because sometimes people make them 30 years later and they're almost like a period piece, like Oliver Stone made Nixon, you know, at least 20 years after the actual happenings. And I think you have to in some cases, because if you do it too soon, like in the case of W, he did that film W about George Bush, and that didn't come off as well.
Yeah, because it was too soon, really, wasn't it? It'd only been a few years, and I think that's it. It can affect it, really.
But this film, Exam, I think it's definitely stood the test of time, and like you said, it's little known, so you could still introduce it to a new audience now, and it would be worthy of getting a bit of a cult following, because maybe it's got one and we just haven't realised yet, but it's definitely worth watching.
I think so, and I think unfortunately it has had some bad reviews, really.
Do you think that
when
just
you look around,
snobby reasons?
I think so, in a way. I think if you look at like the kind of people who have been criticising it, they are kind of the it's not good enough, you know, kind of film critics. And I think it's unfair to what it is.
The kind of people,
because I think you've got to take into
the kind of assholes that don't like a movie like Stroker Ace.
Stroker, get your dander up, this ain't no time to lag.
Well, they can get the fuck out of Dodge, because we do.
Well, I think you have to be fair when reviewing a film and take into consideration things like budget, and things like period,
absolutely,
and stuff like that. And I think often they don't, and I think that's unfair on certain films.
I think
because I think there's a lot of
with some stuff, it's like unless
it's
got, you know, the biggest actors of the moment in it, then they don't take a second look at it. But a lot of these unknowns are actually, you know, doing just as good, if not a better job than the major stars. So it's a bit unfair in that sense.
And I think the cast did a brilliant job of exactly what we wanted them to do in the film, really, and to have us like a snobbish attitude of, oh, it's just a soap star in it, or something like that. It's flimsy. I mean, there's one review here, Kevin Maher at the Times, who said the film's fundamentally pointless.
Why did he say that?
Which is... That's literally the headline of his review, which I just think is like the most mundane and...
Well, that goes to tell you nothing about Exam and everything about Kevin. Kevin, you are pointless.
You are pointless, that's it.
Sorry.
It's just literally going, I don't care about this film. And that's just, I think that's just...
I mean, of course...
mean-spirited and unfair.
And inaccurate, because as we've found by watching it, there's a hell of a lot to be gleaned from it, and as with all of these great set piece films, you know, there's a hell of a lot in there, a hell of a lot of nitty gritty.
I think it's got morality, it's got heart. There's some dark humour in there, you know, it makes you laugh a few times, and you become the investigator with them. You're there trying to solve this puzzle with them. So it's an interesting film. As we say, has been done brilliantly on a small budget, and
for me that was the most impressive
well.
element, is how much they did with the small budget. Just in the look of the film, it was really, really good, and they got some young talented actors that they knew could do the job, and it was well worth it. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick this up, but it started raining here very heavily outside, so got a bit of background noise. It's the rain coming down heavily, but we're not going to worry about that too much. Just thought I'd let you know if that's coming through. But yeah,
it's raining, it's pouring.
You know, the criticism as it's placed, and it's not a perfect film, but to say it's pointless is a lazy review, obviously. But there we go. You can't please everybody, and everybody's got an opinion.
And some people are so.
Yeah, and especially the character Mr. White in this one is extreme. But that was an interesting thing I found about it as well. The red pill and the blue pill. That's kind of getting on in Matrix territory there. That whole thing.
Oh yeah, I didn't really click onto that, but yeah, true. That is a very much a Matrix nod, isn't it?
Yeah, There's definitely that element of, Occam's razor going on.
Which is brought up in there.
Yeah.
A lot of elements like that, like little nods to little philosophical ideas and morality plays in there, which is really nice just going throughout it. It's a clever film.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't try to be too clever, and it doesn't stray from the path up its own arm in that sense. It just gives you enough to get you thinking, to make you think about things.
And an interesting comment as well, I think, on kind of the world as it is. Kind of, these guys have been invited to this interview and will conceivably do anything to get this job just because it's high paid and it's the position and all these benefits and stuff. And they don't care of the morals of it. And the morals of the company, at least at the beginning, seem to be there's no laws or rules in this room.
Yeah.
And the kind of realization of, geez, that's a real reflection on people in real life society, really, and kind of the kind of capitalist, the toxic elements of capitalism, really.
Sure.
And they're kind of placed in this room, really.
Yeah, the rat race. The interesting point is when they bring in, like you said, they bring it in later on, you find out it's a pharmaceutical company, and you also find out about the pandemic and that several of the candidates are directly affected by it, so that gives an extra motive for wanting to get the job, and adds to that element. There's a go-getter, and you think he's doing it because of these capitalist reasons. He wants to be the last man standing. He wants to be everything, the number one. But actually, he's got the pandemic, and that might be his main motivation. When they that bit we talked about at the start, where you got the close-ups and he takes the pill, when he first took it, and he shudders a bit after he's taken it, it's like had a bit. We find out later it's because it's kind of like an adrenaline shot. But when he first did that, I was thinking he was just a drug addict, like Gary Oldman's character in Leon, and he takes those crazy pills, and it's like, he's taking the crazy pills, he's going to go off.
I think that's it, because I think it's supposed to come across like that in the beginning, that God, this guy's like on amphetamines or something like that, and he's a bit of a going as a loose cannon, and he comes across that way in the beginning. But of course, his character arc goes through that whole, actually, he's infected.
It's like that scene in Train Spotting where Spud takes the speed before he goes for an interview, and he's like, all right, so nice to meet you, all right, great. And he's just completely blows it.
And he's got that energy in the beginning, really, because he's so...
Oh, he is. He can't shut the f*** up.
Yeah, motor mouthing.
Hate it.
But excellent film, I think.
Good film.
So, So as we always ask in these things, we always kind of like to sum it up and see what you would give it as a rating. So what would you give it, Greg?
Well, on my IMDb, out of possible 10 stars, I gave it a 7, which is a very decent score. The average score for an average movie, as far as I go, is around 6. So anything higher than a 6 is definitely worth watching. And I thought, it was a decent effort, all told. Mystery thriller that you want to see. 80 minutes long. At first, I thought it was going to be... it's not 80 minutes long, actually. It's a little bit longer than that. But I thought it was going to be in real time. The actual minutes. And then you find out...
Yeah.
That the clock's been... Yeah,
the seconds have changed.
Nice little touch.
It is. That's the kind of good twist at the end when you realise that it has changed and he's still eliminated.
Well, again, they didn't telegraph it, but the guy starts his watch at the start, and that makes you just think, they might be, they might not be doing full seconds there. Might be swizzing somebody.
And there's nice retrospective kind of ticking boxes as well, linking things together, which is nice. That's the
nice use of sort of callbacks there, where it goes back in black and white to the Invigilator saying different lines, like if you try and communicate with us, you will be disqualified.
Which I think works really well.
It's what you want to see. What would you give it out of 10 then?
For me, it's it just gets an 8 for me. I think it is a good score. I think it just tips from 7.5 to an 8. It's a part of it is it's one of my guilty pleasures because it's one of those, as I say, single location films, and they are. I love them all. I think they're brilliant, and so it falls into that category for me. And it's got plenty of the stuff I really like. There's a few areas it falls short. I think as we've discussed, there's just little bits where the ending could maybe be a little bit better, and it maybe little bit more character development would have helped, but it's a really strong film with a really strong story and performances.
But yeah, there we go. Good stuff, Dave.
Brilliant. Well, glad you enjoyed it. Glad it was a good recommendation.
Always good to see these single location films like yourself. I am a fan as well. I like them.
And there we go. So recommended for everyone out there to go and see if you haven't seen it already. But it's definitely one to watch. That's it for us this week on the Cinema Plus podcast. And I've been Dave Roberts with Greg Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
Remember to check us out on moremovies.co.uk and More Movies on Twitter. And join in, guys. We really appreciate seeing you guys checking out our stuff and communicating with us.
Yeah, big ups to Skip Bolden, Tico Romeo, Liam Jackson, and all the crew over there at Twitter Film. We love you guys. But yeah, come join us.
Favourite Twitter friends.
At More Movies 4. And we'll be glad to hear from you.
Absolutely. And there we are for this week. And we'll catch you next time. So there we are. That's it for this episode in our favourite films collection. It's been David Roberts talking with Greg Fisher. I hope you can join us again for another Cinema Plus podcast. In the meantime, be sure to check out some of our film reviews and articles over at moremovies.co.uk or come and say hello to us on Twitter at moremovies4. Thanks for joining us. I've been David Roberts, and that's a wrap.